ever done the podcast before?
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm.
All right. Biggest thing I constantly notice is people drift away from the mic.
Yeah.
So yeah, if you can basically keep it within like 3 to 6 inches.
Okay.
Um,
That's pretty mobile, so you can go anywhere.
yeah, you can take it with you.
Sounds good.
Yeah. I'm pretty excited for our next round of equipment upgrades. Get the low boys that swing up.
Oh.
Excited. I have been getting pretty excited for the redesign of our space at some point, right? Where we could actually like have a more dedicated space and with like a bigger table, more permanent setup on certain things, get some good swag on the walls. Yeah. hmm Yeah, lots of tchotchke, of world travels and
Yeah.
funny baubles we've picked up here and there.
I
Mhm.
know. I don't know how Joe Rogan doesn't get distracted on his desk. Like, there are so many doodads over that
I
thing.
know. I know. It was his version of the charcuterie board. So,
Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah, and look how distracted I got with the charcuterie board. We had to we had to put it away.
Yeah.
I was listening to some of our old episodes just to kind of review it. I thought, yeah, that one guy, he is chewing a lot. Like, you don't hear it on the mic necessarily, but like when I speak, there's a lot of like, It's like, oh, geez. Yeah, you got to get the food away from him. Are we on?
I turned this on.
Oh, perfect. We're on.
All right.
Tony,
Yeah.
welcome.
Thank you. Good to
Yeah.
be here.
Yeah. What are your summer plans?
Let's see. Stay home. Yeah. So we got the son. My oldest son's in Germany in the army, and we're gonna go see him probably in October.
Is he at Ramstein?
Nope, he's a bomb holder, so he works on Patriot missiles. So he's
Okay.
stationed over in Western Germany, and yeah,
Gotcha.
west side of Germany, about an hour from Paris, Luxembourg.
Oh,
Yeah.
fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah. By train?
Trainer car. Yeah. So, yeah.
Okay. Which way are those Patriot missiles pointed?
Hopefully east.
Are they all
Yeah.
pointed at Moscow?
It's hard to say.
It's hard to say. Who would say? Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, even if you ask the right guy.
Yeah.
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 Wow.
So,
This is your oldest boy.
yeah. Yeah.
Okay. And he's Army,
Yeah.
like yourself.
Yep. Yep. So,
Are you officially retired or are you in terms of the Army, are you officially retired? Are you do any reserve work, anything like that at
no,
this
I'm
point?
officially retired.
Okay.
Yep.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
I'm always curious how much people miss a life that's so dominant in your lifestyle, and then you get out. I was talking with a law enforcement law enforcement officer about a similar question a week or two ago, and I'm curious what your thoughts are in that area. Well, let me put it this way: when you go from a life that basically dictates how you live every aspect of your life, it's more than just a job,
Hmm.
and then you just leave. How does that second act feel?
Yeah. Well, it's kind of just habits you develop, over time. And I believe growing up, our family was, pretty regimented, pretty structured, not to the extreme, but just, discipline, hard work, that, work ethic and things like that, taking pride in what you do. My dad's like, if you do that, you do it well because your name's on it.
Hmm.
So a lot of those traits were already ingrained in me growing up, and then the military was just a natural fit for that. Being an officer is a little bit different because you have a little bit more, I think, freedom and control over your off time and different things like that. And then also being medical, it's a completely different animal. An officer in the infantry is different than an officer in Army Nurse Corps, or the Army Medical Corps. So, yeah,
Okay. And your entire time in the military was being attached to that medical side of things.
correct. Yeah,
Gotcha.
yeah.
Gotcha. Did you know that going in? Was that the route that you had planned out with your recruiter in some way?
No, so I end up getting an ROTC scholarship my senior year of high school for mathematics.
Hmm.
And I didn't really know what I was going to do with a math degree. And my uncle, who was a nurse in the Navy, said, "Well, you should look into nursing. It's a pretty good profession."
Okay.
And my dad and older brother were medics in the National Guard. And so I would kind of listen to their stories and always found it fascinating. And then when I was a kid, I had a kidney disease. So I was in the hospital for about a year, I think, and off and on. And so I was thought it would be maybe good to give back to that, because I had good nurses and I had bad nurses. So, I was, so yeah, it was just kind of a natural fit. And at that time, there was such a shortage of nurses that they said, yeah, no problem, you can switch your major. So I switched my major to nursing and just did nursing.
Wow.
So yeah. And the 4 years ROTC, I was on the Ranger Challenge team. So we did a lot of infantry type stuff. We'd run 6 miles twice a week with a 30-pound pack. And Mondays was in tennis shoes and Fridays was in boots. And so I did that for 4 years, kind of. And then we'd have a competition for state. And then if you won state, went to brigade. And our brigade competition was out in Colorado, and all our Midwest teams lost because the altitude killed us. We acclimated for like
Yeah.
12 hours. It's
You
like,
land, yeah,
not
you
enough.
landed in Denver and thought, oh no.
Fucking win. Exactly.
We're not gonna win
Yeah.
this, boys.
Yeah, BYU, Colorado State always beat our butt, So yeah, because they were just acclimated and everything. So, but that was good. And then I went to airborne school in '91, and all my instructors were like, "Are you sure you want to be a nurse?" I'm like, "Well, I don't want to run hills all the rest of my life." So
Right.
yeah,
Right.
yeah. So I
Carrying
kind
you.
of got that out of my system,
Gotcha.
Fun stuff.
Gotcha. Got your tab and then said,
Yeah.
thanks.
Yeah.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah. It came back to haunt me in 2007 December of 2006, I got a phone call and they said, "When was the last time you jumped out of an airplane?" I said 1991. And they're like, "Close enough. You need to pack your bags and report to Fort Bragg on the 25th of December." I'm like, "That's Christmas." And they're like, "Okay, the 26th of December." And so on the 1st of January, we're in Kuwait. So, and that was for the surge back in 2007. So I
Hmm.
deployed with the 82nd Airborne over to Iraq.
Okay. And did you jump out of some airplanes?
We did not. So
Wow.
had we had more time, they would have sent me to the basic airborne refresher course and
Uh-huh.
pushed me out of a plane. And then they're like, "Okay, you're recertified." And then I think you got like an extra $100 a month being airborne certified. But yeah, I still got to wear the beret and everything, which was kind of cool. So
Wow.
yeah.
Wow. So now we can still ask the question, when was the last time you jumped out of an airplane?
1991. Yeah.
I did it enough.
Mama didn't raise no fool. Yeah. You
Right,
do,
right.
I had a buddy in the army. He said, "You put yourself behind the eight ball enough, you're going to get hit by the eight ball sooner or later." So, jumping out of the airplane first couple times, kind of cool. And then it's like, there's a lot that could go wrong. They taught us all about, a chute that doesn't deploy and, risers getting tangled and bumping into somebody else and, things like that. So, yeah, the more you do things like that, you're like, maybe this isn't such a great idea if I don't have to. So,
I
yeah.
had a firearms instructor who, between courses of fire, we were taking a break and he just started talking about his military career. And he said, "Yeah, I always feel bad for my buddy who had 751 successful jumps." And we're like, "Why do you feel bad for him?" He's like, "Well, he jumped 752 times,
Yeah.
just the last time he had a chute malfunction and like he survived it. Yeah, but with life altering injuries.
Right. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah.
So, do you, okay, so you go and you arrive in Kuwait early 2006,
2007. Yep.
2007.
Yep.
Okay, thank you. And then from there, you were headed towards Baghdad, or
Yeah.
can you kind of give us the story, give us the timeline
So
a
we're in
little bit?
Kuwait for about a month to kind of, because they moved so many troops in so fast, they were having trouble figuring out where we were going to go.
Hmm.
So we stayed in Kuwait for about a month and we did some training. A lot of the guys we were with, we went with what the Army calls a brigade combat team. So it's a team, brigade size element. So 500 people or a little more. And you've got military police, you got infantry, you got field artillery. And then you've got, all your combat support elements, the docs and the nurses and the dentists and things like that go logistics, health, public health type people. And so the medical piece, we basically just did sick call for people because they still get sick and things. And then we also did training on operational versus, basically offensive versus defensive injuries. So if you're in the offense, you're probably going to be more prone to gunshot wounds. So, what's the latest and greatest how do we treat gunshot wounds? And then if you're in a defensive position, then it's more like indirect fire, rockets, mortars, that kind of thing. And how do you treat those? So we got real
Right.
good at, rapid sequence intubation, tourniquet applications, and different things like that. Pressure dressings. So if someone gets shot low in the groin area, how do you stop the bleeding? Something like that. So you basically got to get a clamp on that or put in a pressure dressing of some kind. So different ways you can do that. And then with this kind of supplies that you have, and depending on where you are in the battlefield, we were at an aid station, so we didn't have real surgical capability. But we did have things like Hexpan, which is an IV fluid that kind of expands the blood volume, so people don't go into shock, hypovolemic shock. And then there's also different quick clot type stuff, and then a hemocon bandage. So the quick clot's kind of a powder you pour in a wound and it clots the bleeding. And then the hemocon bandage is made out of, I think, crushed shrimp, or some kind of sea shellfish. And it comes in a little wafer, and you can just put that on the bleeding wound, and it'll,
Shellfish.
yeah, yeah, it's
It's
kind
like
of,
it's their exoskeleton ground up
yeah,
into a cracker
yep.
and then just
Yeah, you slap that on. So we had a guy who got shot in the
who
neck.
thought of that?
I don't know, but I wish I would have, because I'd be on a beach somewhere.
All right.
A guy that got shot in the neck, and he was bleeding from his carotid, and one of the medics cut a little round circle out of that wafer and stuck it in the hole, and that saved his life. So yeah, so it was kind of interesting, some of the technology that you had to do that, but a lot of it was still old school, bandages and ace wraps and things like that. So
Okay. Wow.
we trained in Kuwait for about a month, and then we got a flight into Baghdad. So landed in Baghdad and was there for about 2 or 3 days, just kind of hanging out on the tarmac. And then they put us on Chinook helicopters about 2 o'clock in the morning, and we flew up to Taji, which was a big base, and it's about 3 mile perimeter. And half of it was occupied by the Iraqi army, and then the other half we had taken over. And it used to be Chemical Ali's home base, and so they put us in great big Quonset huts, sleeping bunk beds, and then they had a shower trailer at the end, and so everybody would shower and brush their teeth and all that kind of stuff. And our clinic was about a mile away, so they'd pick us up on a bus and take us into the clinic in the mornings to work the clinic.
You're seeing both soldiers and Iraqi civilians?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and Iraqi soldiers. So they'd get shot up, they'd bring them to us to stabilize, and then interrogate them and things like that. But yeah,
Gotcha.
yeah. So we saw a little bit of everything. We saw a 13-year-old girl who was pregnant, and she unfortunately had miscarried. And her local midwife said, "Well, just go home, you'll pass it," and she couldn't pass it. So then they had stopped one of our convoys. The convoy brought her in and her mom, and then the doc talked to the local Inmon to get permission to do an exam and things like that. So we were able to help her deliver, and then we wrapped it up and put it in a box and kind of gave it to her to
Go home
and things. So
perform the
so you
grieving process.
yeah.
Was she married?
I don't know. There was a lot of sexual assault and abuse over there. So,
I've been curious about that. I was under the impression that that was frankly, a worse problem in Africa than in Asia because of differences in, call it severity of religious teaching. But do you think that's perhaps not the case, that in these very remote areas, everything imaginable does happen?
yeah,
God.
yeah. It's pretty sad.
Mm-hmm.
We had a little baby came in. He had been sick for days. I'm not sure what it was, high fevers, things like that. And he came into us pretty much
Like,
dead or pretty close to dead. So
okay.
we started an IV on them and got them hydrated. Came around, got a heartbeat up again, And then we evac'd them to a local Iraqi hospital. And the bad thing about that was if you were a Shia and ended up in a Sunni hospital, you probably outcome wasn't very good. So there was still a lot of issues even amongst the Iraqis themselves,
Sure.
so tribalism and
A lot of
things like
tribal
that.
tensions.
Yeah.
Wow.
So
Huh.
and then we took care of the local. We had a lot of foreign nationals that were helping. Like some of them were cooks, and some of them were garbage collectors and different things like that. Some of them did our laundry, so we'd kind of take care of them as well.
Right.
One of our garbage men he got his or his hand amputated in the garbage truck. The back gate came down and cut his arm off or cut his hand off. So I was working on a Sunday morning, just me in the clinic, and they called us to the trauma room. I walk in there and there's a guy with his arm all bandaged up, and the medic comes in with a Ziploc bag of ice with the guy's hand in it. And the docs they called another doc in, and he came in and he's like, "You want to unwrap that hand?" I'm like, "No, pretty sure what it looks like. I know what's underneath there." So we started an IV on him, gave him some pain medicine and antibiotics, and then called in a helicopter, and he went to Baghdad. So he was from Hungary, and then I think he went back home. They couldn't reattach his hand.
They couldn't reattach.
No. So
Wow.
yeah,
Yeah. I guess there's a way in which we probably always hear the extreme stories, but it always seems that tragedy is just around the corner
yeah,
in a war zone specifically, but sometimes just in the rest of the world generally.
sure. Yeah, I think sometimes we take for granted that we're really safe here, but I think you have just a good chance getting hit by a bus or car accident or some of the bigger cities drive-by shootings.
Yep.
So yeah, I think sometimes we have this false sense of security, and you just never know when your time's up. So just
Right.
live life best you can.
I wonder if people will look back and read descriptions of our time and be like, whoa, AIDS, COVID, identity theft, highway accidents, like those people must have just been living in fear every waking moment.
Right.
The way we look back to the Middle Ages and think, whoa, the bubonic plague,
Yeah.
war, drought, disease. Those people must have been living in fear every waking moment. But I wonder if there's a way in which we sort of aggregate all the risks of the moment that other people lived in and think, how do those people make it day to day?
Yeah.
Which, I mean, I do think, I mean, in a certain way, we are very safe in America. But then again, like you start thinking about the things that we just take for granted in terms of risk profile, like driving at 90 miles an hour down the highway or having so much of our personal information available, potentially available to people with ill intent. We just live in a world in which there are very, very serious risks that we're just sort of comfortable with because they're the environment we grow up in.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And you think about people live back in the Middle Ages or even the 1800s, life expectancy is so short. Their misery was short lived, where ours, now we're living so long, there's probably a good chance something bad's going to happen to you, So, yeah. So back then it's like, I'm probably dead by 45. So, chances are,
Yeah, it certainly could happen. Certainly in those times, most people would have lost a sibling during their childhood. On the other hand, probably most people, most people probably never dealt with a relative with dementia or Alzheimer's.
right.
Most likely.
Yeah.
I mean, people dying in their 60s was not considered particularly out of the ordinary.
Right.
Whereas today, someone dying in their 60s would be like, wow, they died relatively young. On the other hand, how many of us have had to, in a way, experience the death of a loved one before their physical death because of diseases like dementia and Alzheimer's?
Right.
And yeah, it's a different world. It's tough to say. It's tough to say one is better than the other.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So you were mentioning before we were on that part of the work that you were doing in Iraq was an effort to win over Iraqi citizenry because you were providing aid of different kinds. You were particularly involved in medical aid.
Right.
how well do you think it worked overall? Or, well, and even before that, well, can you just flesh out some of the other things that the U.S. was trying at this time?
Yeah. So we had a lot of civilian affairs teams, and they'd go out and talk to the local mayors and local imams and just kind of see, what do you guys need? Well, it'd be nice to have electricity more than 4 hours a day. Well, we could probably help you with that.
Uh-huh.
It'd be nice to have a safe environment so my kids can walk to school. It'd be nice for my kids to be able to go to school. We can probably help with that. So a lot of it wasn't really nation rebuilding. It was nation building. The infrastructure didn't exist. And the stuff that did exist was not to code at all. And so if you ever been in a third world country and you see the rat nest of power lines, y'all know it was like that. And so, just kind of getting some things to code and then just providing a good and safe environment for them. A lot of the guys, didn't have jobs. So 1 week we spent doing physicals on Iraqi men to see if they would qualify for the Iraqi police force or the Iraqi army. And so, kind of helping with that type of thing to get them some sense of normalcy and then just living amongst them. So during the surge, the whole thing was to get off the big bases and push out and live in the neighborhoods amongst the locals. And so by doing that, we showed that, we were human too, kind of some of the just basic human necessities, and that we had families, we had kids, we had wives, we had mothers, and things like that. And so one place I was stationed, we were co-located with Iraqi Army unit, and we kind of helped train some of their medics and things. And one of the local kids was kidnapped, and so they wanted to know if we'd go help try to find the kid. And it's like, yeah, we can go do that. So we went and found him. She was safe, brought her back, and so they had a big barbecue for us. And so we walked over there and like, so what are we going to be having for a barbecue? And they're like, goat. It's like, cool. Never had goat. It's like, where's the goat? And it's like, tied up next to the tree. All these city kids were like, I'm not hungry anymore.
Oh, really?
So,
Oh,
but yeah. So, things like that, and there were multiple stories of helping diffuse tensions amongst neighbors and different things like that as well. So, yeah.
mm-hmm.
And then a medical piece, we'd go out and do medical missions where we'd go and do like sick call for the local Iraqis and things. And so diabetes care, foot care, a lot of teenagers would come up wanting something for their acne, so it's kind of funny. And then we'd pass out toothbrushes and soccer balls and coloring books and things like that. And so, that was pretty good.
You felt you were bringing some smiles to people.
Yeah, I think so. Just again, that basic humanity,
Uh-huh.
just to show them that we really were there to help try to make things better. So,
Okay.
yeah.
This is a bit more of a 30,000-foot question, but what do you think of that general strategy if you, some people have said that the best thing a foreign invader can do is get in, do whatever political end they were hoping for, and then get out.
Right.
Right. The British called it the butcher and bolt
Ah,
model.
yeah.
What are your thoughts on nation building now after seeing it in person, but also having time to reflect on it?
Yeah. I think there's just so much corruption in these third world nations. And so I think there's got to be some way to kind of weed that out and to help them build a system that will work, and it's kind of like you can't do that. We'd have Iraqi prisoners brought in that were beat up by Iraqi army, and I'm like, you can't beat them up, why not? It's like, because it's just wrong, and then they don't talk anyway. So we have other ways to make them talk, but I think you don't have to torture them or beat them or anything like that. And I actually had a buddy, he worked for Marine intelligence, and he went down to Guantanamo, and the way he would turn a lot of people was just to sit and talk with them, offer them a smoke. Can I get you a Coke? And just start talking to him. By, time his session was over, an hour later, he had all the information he had, and they didn't even know that they'd given him any information,
They had never made this mental concession.
Right. So I think you really need to build relationships with these countries, and then eventually, and have a plan of, passing it over to them to run. But a lot of times they're so stuck in there. Well, I'm not going to trust that person because they're a Kurd and
Hmm.
I'm a Shia. It's like, but they're the most qualified, smartest person in the room, you know? And so getting over some of those things and kind of helping them see the bigger picture. Because in Iraq, there really wasn't a sense of nationality. There was a sense
No.
of, I'm a Kurd, I'm a Shia, I'm a Sunni, you know, and it's like you got to kind of think bigger than that for the good of the cause and the good of the greater good. You guys need to figure out how to work together.
Right. Or else this isn't going to happen.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. You can't bind a nation together out of tribes with their own, exclusively with their sense of priority being attached to their own tribe. Right. And so if you're going to attempt at nation building, that has to go. Uh, I guess I've just wondered many times about the was building a healthy nation in Iraq, was that ever was that ever a strong possibility that was something that could be accomplished? And I don't feel as if I have a great answer to that question.
Hmm. Yeah. And it's kind of like, well, it's like Benjamin Franklin said when they came out of the Continental Congress and they're like, well, so what do we have? Do we have a republic or do we have a, you know, democracy? He's like, well, we have a republic as long as you can keep it, you
Mm-hmm.
know? And I think the same applies is how bad do they want it? And, you know, because it requires a lot of hard work to keep it, you
Yep.
know? And so I think there's a lot to be said of how bad do they want it? And they've got to want it more than they've got to want to hold on to their, you know, tribalism.
I have thought about that as one of the unique gifts of the Western tradition is that there is something that allows us to look past the grievances suffered by our fathers and grandfathers, right? I mean, the idea that the United States and Britain could be allies in multiple world conflicts after having been at war with each other twice less than 100 years before, or less than 150 years before if you're talking about World War II, is is so profoundly Western that we don't even often pause to think about it. But when you compare it to other world traditions in which enmity between groups can last for 1,000 years,
Mhm.
um, it's when you compare it to that, you realize how remarkable it really is. Uh, and it's always struck me as something that's somewhat native to us as Westerners, that we don't pause and think about it, but we ought to, because we may think that there's something that is giving us an advantage in certain ways.
Mhm.
Rather, yeah. Anyway, I'll pause there. So, okay. So just circling back. So you're in Iraq by early 2007. How long were you there?
Till March of 2008.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And then from there, you were back stateside.
Right.
Okay.
So came
So,
back to my home base was actually South Carolina. So I went back to Fort Bragg to turn in all of my equipment and be discharged from them, and then went back to South Carolina where I worked in the hospital urgent care until I went and talked to my boss. I said, I think I'm going to get out. And
right.
as an officer, you resign your commission, which is the equivalent of a divorce.
Uh-huh.
And she's like, well, I'm sorry to hear that. Okay. You know, and that was kind of all that they said.
Hmm.
So by that time, I had already looked at other options. And so the United States Public Health Service Commission Corps would take me on and I could transfer all over my time and my rank and everything and work with them. And so that process took a little bit over a year, but in that time, so 2008, we left South Carolina, July, moved to Iowa. I started working with an Indian tribe there as they were getting all my paperwork together to transfer me over to the Commission Corps.
Uh-huh.
So that finally took place in 2009. And
And so at that point, you were officially speaking no longer a member of the military.
correct.
Okay.
I was a uniformed service member, but not Department of Defense.
Okay.
So we wore kind of a Navy khaki uniform
Uh-huh.
because the Commissioned Corps' history dates back to the 1700s with the Sixth Sailor and Seaman Act, when all the sailors would come into port and then they'd leave, and they'd leave all the sick ones behind. And it was creating a hardship on the
Oh, the ship
cities.
would just be like, all right, here's everyone who's not seaworthy.
Right.
We're out of here.
Yeah. Yeah.
Jeez.
Yeah. And so I think it was John Adams created this corps to kind of take care of these people
Hmm.
and things. And so that kind of grew and morphed into public health service. And so a lot of our earlier days were immigration, Ellis Island, those types of things, where we would examine the immigrants coming in for infectious disease and decide to either quarantine them or send them back home to preserve and protect the health and safety of the nation. So a healthy nation is a prosperous nation. So it all is kind of tied to the economy. And so you keep people healthy and they can go work. So, yeah.
Okay. You weren't tempted to do a second tour.
I was not. Again,
They might make me jump out of an airplane.
put yourself behind that 8 ball enough. And, 15 months was a long time. I had 2 boys, 6 and 8 years of age,
Uh-huh.
and it wasn't fair to them to be gone that long. My wife, she did a great job, but, I love my family, I love my kids. And my next assignment was supposed to be at Uniform Services University of the Health Sciences in Bethesda, Maryland, and it's kind of a medical and master's program for military folk.
Okay. So people who have a degree already, specifically medical of some kind.
It would be it's a med school.
Okay.
So and then it's also a master's program for nursing. So if you want to go to nurse anesthesia school or nurse practitioner,
Yep.
informatics, I think research was another one, and then I think maybe even behavior health.
Yep.
So that was my next assignment. So I called the person that I was going to replace. I said, "Hey, what's your life like?" And she's like, "Well, I worked about 70 hours a week, and they push you pretty hard to get your PhD while you're here. I don't get to see my kids a lot." And I'm like, "I've just done that, and
Okay. I already did that on the other side of the world. Do I
Yeah.
really need to do it stateside?
and I saw a lot of my peers, chase after that career at the detriment of their family, and I just wasn't willing to make that." And then the unit that I went to Iraq with said, "Hey, we're on the task to go to Afghanistan in 2009. Would you want to come?" I'm like, "I'm getting out." So no. So
Wow. Wow. Ooh, I just want to press on this a little bit. Was there anything that happened while you were in Iraq that was maybe a singular experience that crystallized for you? All right, as soon as this I'm over, I'm not coming back. Like,
not really. I mean, my unit, they were top notch. The 82nd Airborne is just, yeah, they're high speed, low drag, and they get things done. And they do it in such a professional and excellent manner.
mhm.
So, yeah, it was great. Had I been single, I probably would have stayed in, and things like that. But
Okay, so it was mostly the pull of that family situation.
yeah, and I think I had some time to do some really spiritual reflection there, and just kind of pray and seek God's guidance. And I just really felt a peace about doing this. And then these doors opened because even when I was in Iraq, I was reaching out to the public health service, and they're like, "Oh yeah, we can get you, no problem." So I just felt a peace about that, and kind of that open door. And so I'd kind of talk to my wife about it as well.
Hmm.
And you know, she was in somewhat of an agreement. She really, her and the kids both really liked South Carolina,
Oh,
but
it's a beautiful
yeah.
state. Charleston?
no, we were in Columbia.
Columbia.
Yeah,
Okay.
Fort Jackson.
Yeah. Obviously, we live in such a different part of the country now, but
Yeah,
yeah, those southern seaboard states are just really magical. Well, at least some of the year.
yeah,
I have friends and relatives there, and they say, "Yeah, July's tough."
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, Savannah. Have you been to Savannah?
I have not.
Oh, you
Oh,
got to go.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Savannah to me is a combination of the best of Boston combined with the best of Louisiana,
Oh, nice.
right? So it's got some great architecture. It's got these great houses, well, Boston and Louisiana, they both have great food. Uh, and Savannah has a very relaxed air, all in my experience, all times of the day.
Mm,
I love being there.
yeah.
Yeah. I actually, so when I stayed there, it was pretty great. There was an Airbnb that was this old mansion that had been converted to an Airbnb. So I was in this really wonderful little like third story nook, right? That it was like low ceiling, all the walls were bookshelves, and then this little bed, right? And so you could just lie in bed and just grab books off the shelf and read them.
Oh, nice.
So then like 1 block down was this great restaurant, 2 blocks down was this church, and then 3 blocks down was this really great jiu-jitsu gym. And so I remember thinking very distinctly that, oh my goodness, I could live here
Yeah.
and never leave this 3 block radius.
Right.
Like it's got everything I need.
Yeah.
Great place to live, food, church, jiu-jitsu. It's all in one spot. So, and to this day, I think, man, I gotta get back.
Yeah.
So, okay, but you guys were in Colombia.
Yeah.
Okay, for how long?
Let's see. I think we moved there in 2005, 3 years. So, but I was gone a lot. So I was gone, of course, to Iraq, and then before that, I was over in Georgia, going to Command and General Staff College. They had a distance learning program over there, so that was like a 4 month course.
Yeah.
So I'd be able to come home on the weekends, but it was pretty intense course as far as working on a general staff. So again, kind of thinking of that strategic planning, so the 30,000 foot view versus tactical or operational planning, which is, in the trenches and lower. But yeah, so working and cross service, so working with the Marines and the Air Force and the Navy and, all that. So kind of learning how they do things and their language, because the Navy has a whole different language,
Whole different language
Yeah.
for
everything.
as compared to like the Corps or the Army. Is that what you mean?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, because I go to the second deck, I'm like, what's the second deck? Second floor. Oh, okay.
Where am I going?
Yeah. Where's, hey, yeah, where's
Oh,
the
so this is
bathroom?
not necessarily just the medical language that they use. This is everything.
Yeah,
This is,
yeah,
This is
the
a
whole-
cultural jargon.
It is, yeah, yeah,
Gotcha.
yeah,
Go to the second deck.
yeah, yeah.
All right, I'm out on the porch.
Right, yeah,
In the backyard.
yeah.
What?
Like, where's the bathroom? We don't have one. You don't know, but the head is on the second deck. I'm like, oh, okay, yeah. So it's just, yeah, interesting.
Gotcha. Okay, now I understand. Okay, so then you basically transitioned to in-clinic medical care of some kind,
Yeah.
and that is both what you transitioned to and what you've stayed in even up until today. Is
Correct.
that right?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Wow. Can you describe, you told me before we went on that you basically have 3 part-time jobs.
Yeah.
Can you run through them very quickly so that as we delve into them, people are sort of oriented towards the different areas of your practice?
Yeah. So I work for Haven Direct, which is a clinic over in Riverton, and it's a direct patient care model. You kind of think of Netflix and Costco. So it's a membership fee you pay every month, and you can come see us as much as you want. And then the medications and the labs we give at wholesale cost.
Okay.
So we're able to pass those savings on to the patients.
Okay. All right.
And then the other one is a Lander free
I know
medical.
some people who usually do need ibuprofen about a carton at a time.
Yeah. We can get you a big bottle for like $2, Yeah.
That is wild.
It is. It's kind of crazy. And it kind of is frustrating when you see the upcharge of medications that occur in our society.
I want to get more into that, but please continue.
The other clinic I work at is a Lander Free Medical Clinic. So we provide free medical services to people that are 200% or less of the national poverty level, and they don't qualify for any other services, Medicare, Medicaid, and they can't really afford insurance
Mm.
on the marketplace.
And they're not employed at a place that will provide that.
Exactly. Yeah. So we have about 250 current patients with that. And then the third clinic I work at is Benessery, which is a healthy aging and wellness. So we deal a lot with bioidentical hormone replacement therapy because the bioidentical stuff is safer than the synthetic stuff. The synthetic estrogen and progesterone has been shown to increase heart attacks, breast cancer, that kind of thing.
Mm.
But the bioidentical has not. So we use a lot of that to optimize people's health
Right.
and slow down the aging process.
What are your thoughts on American aging?
American aging.
Yeah. Do we age harder than other countries?
I think
We are slipping behind other developed nations in terms of life expectancy.
right. Yeah. Yeah. I,
Right.
I think it's kind of that bell curve. You've got some that don't do very well at all, others that do okay, and then you've got like 80-year-olds that are still hiking the mountains and things, which is just amazing. So, and it's hard to say, rhyme or reason. I've got a family member, and she was a nurse and healthy, never smoked, never drank, and has dementia, vascular dementia. And then I've got a friend who is an 80-year-old lady who hikes mountains every weekend. And so, why the difference? And I'm not sure. Genetics could be some of it,
Mm.
environment, stress. But I think also, we have such an obesity issue in this nation that deals a lot with it because obesity increases your risk for all kinds of different cancers, heart disease
Mm.
as well. So, yeah.
Yeah. Do you worry about the sedentary aspects of our culture? Sit at a desk and work a job, sit at a desk for school, sit in a car between your workplace and home, sit at a table to eat dinner, sit on a couch to watch TV.
Yeah. Sitting is the new smoking, is what they say.
Sitting is the new smoking.
Yeah. And that's the damage it does. Our sedentary lifestyle is the equivalent of if you were a smoker,
Uh-huh.
yeah, on your body. So you got to get up and you don't move it, you lose it. So, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm I'm wondering, is this though somewhat forced by our economy, right? I mean, can you really be a website designer on your feet?
We have these things at work that we used to call cows, which are computers on wheels. And
Okay.
so there are these raisable desks and things like that. So you could
Okay.
actually stand and type and different things like that. So there are some things that I think we've introduced to maybe help prevent some of that
Okay.
kind of thing. And then I think as an individual, you just need to be intentional. It's like I work a sedentary job. I've got to go, to the gym every morning or every night or whatever or go for a walk, for at least 30 minutes every day. So, and I know a lot of businesses have that. They have times, kind of a break. Hey, you need to take your 30-minute break and go walk along the path that we built for all our employees
Mm.
and things. So, yeah.
My family stayed in Italy for 2 weeks, one year, and it was a tiny apartment with a tiny kitchen with a tiny fridge. So every morning we would wake up and you'd have to walk down 6 flights of steps, walk a number of blocks to the market,
Yeah.
walk through the market, get your groceries, then walk several blocks back, then up those 6 flight of steps, and then put everything in the fridge,
Mhm.
which was only really large enough to hold maybe 2 days of food,
Yep.
right? And inevitably, every morning there'd be something that we wanted, butter or bread or wine, a lot of wine.
Yeah. When in
And
Italy.
so I remember reflecting on it later. I'm not even sure it occurred to me at the time, but reflecting on it later, I thought that living situation basically demanded a level of physical activity
Mhm.
just by the fact that there were no elevators and that the market was close enough that you felt comfortable walking to it,
Mhm.
but not so close that it didn't require any effort.
Right.
Right. And so, yeah, so like you say, 30 minutes a day between the steps the 10-minute walk to the market and then back, you had already gotten 20 to 25 minutes of decent physical activity,
Right.
right?
Hmm.
As well as what I would say are the social benefits of being out and seeing people that like we were only visiting, but if you go to the meat market every other day or every day, by the time after 10 days, you're kind of friendly with the guy on the other side of that counter,
Right.
right? He's not an anonymous employee of Smith's or Safeway or Kroger's or whatever your grocery store is. And so there was this social health to it, and there was this physical health to it. Like, do you look at the way American culture is bound inside cars and bound to desks as something that has to change before America can get healthy again? Or are you thinking, no, if we all went to the gym for an hour, we'd be okay?
Yeah. It's hard to say, really. I think there's a lot of variables that kind of play into that. Inner cities, there's so much violence, people don't go outside.
Hmm.
And then they have, we're starting to see like rickets, which is a vitamin D deficiency in inner city kids because they'd never go outside to play because they're afraid they're going to get shot.
Oh, God.
Yeah. So I think there's just so many variables to that. And you have to kind of figure out what works in your environment. Can I go to the gym or no, I can't, but I can go for a walk or I can't go for a walk. So I have to get a treadmill or something, but
Mm.
there are, things. And I think, again, people just need to kind of be intentional about and take some ownership of their health and
Mhm.
understand that if I don't, then this is probably the road I'm going to, go down. So,
Right. I wonder if it's true to say, though, that in America, because of the way we've built our architecture, the way we've laid out our towns, there needs to be a level of intentionality that people in other types of communities, say in Central America or in Europe or in Africa, they don't have to have that level of intentionality.
right. Yeah.
So it seems to me that you're here saying, like, yes, you live in America. Wonderful. You always have Wi-Fi. Congratulations.
Yeah.
You don't always have exercise and activity built into your day the
Right.
way you might have if you lived in a small village in Africa
Mhm.
where
Yeah.
you walk everywhere,
Right. Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Instead of driving to Safeway, why don't you walk,
Uh-huh.
or ride your bike,
Right.
And a lot of people are, but yeah, just kind of think a little bit outside the box and,
Right.
yeah.
I spent a week in Guatemala, and Guatemala is a developing nation in some ways. They don't have some of those electrical codes or some of those debris control codes that you might find. So, like, yeah, it's totally normal to see, nice, decent house with like just a pile of garbage out in front of it. Right. And the roads aren't paved. And it's like you reminded me with those electric lines, right? Just like low slung power lines, just like 2 feet above your head, right?
Yeah.
Not all of it is particularly pleasing to the eye by any stretch, but there's something really engaging about going out and walking through the village, be, not necessarily because of the aesthetic, but because of that neighborhood feel that you have,
Yeah.
that you can go and get your basic grocery needs met by someone at a corner store,
Yeah.
and that you do see people sitting outside and just enjoying the sun.
Yeah.
And so just walking to someone's house, you might have 3 or 4 social interactions
Hmm.
just on your way to their house,
Yeah.
like a quarter mile away.
Right.
I'm in real estate. I was showing a house today. I couldn't believe, like, I was standing with this person out on the street for like 20 minutes. No one came by.
Hmm.
No one, not a soul.
Hmm.
Like we were in the middle of a town and it felt deserted. I
Yeah.
mean, it's wild.
Yeah.
The difference is,
Yeah,
so
yeah, that sense of community that you find in third world countries is just awesome. We went to Honduras and we've been to Nepal, and exactly what you're saying. They don't have a lot of the amenities that we have, but they have that sense of community,
okay.
and it's just very refreshing, because you meet people on a different level,
Yep.
and it's not as superficial as what we experience here in the States.
Yeah. So Aponesere, am I right? Am I
Mhm.
pronouncing that right? Okay, so you may treat someone with like introducing hormones that how are those hormones made?
Yeah, so they're made out of yams, and I don't understand quite the whole process, but from the yam, they're actually able to extrapolate the estrogen hormone and the testosterone hormone.
Hmm.
And then they, these places that make this inspect it to make sure that you're getting the right potency and the qualities there, and there's not a bunch of other junk mixed in with it,
Uh-huh.
and things like that. So, um, but
And so then you take this as an injection or an IV drip or a
there's
pill?
different ways of, yeah, dispensing it. So there's, for testosterone, there's pills, there's creams, there's shots, um, and there's pellets. So there are these little pellets that look like rice, and they are inserted underneath the skin,
Uh-huh.
and they absorb slowly over 3 to 6 months. And
Uh-huh.
so you get kind of a nice slow release, I guess, of
Uh-huh.
that.
Okay.
And so that was one of the reasons that I took this job is they sent me down to Denver to be trained on how to insert the pellets. So
Hmm.
it's a little bit of a surgical procedure, but nothing seriously invasive, but
Sure.
so there's that. And then estrogen is usually a cream or a pill.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Forgive my level of medical knowledge I'm going to reveal. People always say, "Oh man, if you get on testosterone therapy, your balls are going to shrivel up, and your body will basically shut down any natural production of that hormone." Help me out here. Like, is that true?
And it can be.
It can
Yeah.
be.
Yeah. So different people react differently to it. And some guys do notice decrease in testicle size.
Uh-huh.
If you are a man and you still plan on having children, we tell you not to start testosterone because it can shut down the natural production of testosterone, and that can be permanent to where you never reproduce semen.
Okay.
So, if you're still thinking kids, testosterone's not for you. But if you're not, then, yeah, we supplement that. Now, if you stop taking it, eventually your body does wake back up and start making it again. So like I've had guys who've taken it and then found out, oh, I guess I do want kids. You stop it, and 6 to 12 months later, the majority of them are producing semen again. So,
Okay.
yeah,
Gotcha.
sperm. So,
Uh-huh. The challenge though that we were dealing with is that as men age, your natural testosterone drops, and that leads to loss of general energy levels,
yeah,
general muscle mass.
muscle mass,
What else?
brain fog, bone density. So I
Uh-huh.
had a guy who was a chronic smoker, 2 pack a day. He had horrible osteoporosis.
Yep.
Started him on testosterone, and his bone density returned back to normal after
Okay.
being on testosterone for about a year and a half.
Right.
So yeah, osteoporosis, it helps to blood vessel wall structure. It helps
Mhm.
to improve that and to heal damage that's been done by that.
Okay.
Yeah. So
Is it particularly, you mentioned testosterone and estrogen specifically. Is there something about those two hormones that are specifically related to uh like age management or premature aging prevention as opposed to any other hormone like serotonin or dopamine? Like why those two specifically?
um, that's a good question. I haven't really got into that depth. So it does kind of depend because there's other things like thyroid is a
Uh-huh.
big one that we deal with. And again, we're not sure what the cause of all these are. Some of it is natural aging. By the time women are 40, they've lost 50% of their testosterone production. And
Okay.
they need that for bone health
Yep.
as well as vascular health and things as well.
Okay. Both sexes need both hormones,
Right.
although testosterone is sort of associated with masculine virility.
True.
Estrogen is sort of associated with the female body.
Right.
Is that there must be a reason for that, but it's not It's not the whole picture.
Right. Yeah. And men have, some estrogen. It's definitely in lower amounts than women, and vice versa for women. They have some testosterone, but it's, very low compared to men.
Uh-huh.
So, but they still need it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so by replacing that and optimizing their levels, it helps them, feel better. They don't put on weight as much, have more energy, more stamina, less brain fog. Their quality of life is kind of what we're looking at helping,
Gotcha.
because a lot of times, I've been doing medicine for 30 years now, and a lot of the stuff that we're taught in school, you give them these things, but it doesn't improve their quality of life. And so it's like, why? And what other things are out there that have been shown to do that? And bioidentical hormones have been shown to do that. So, but because it's a bioidentical, there's no money in it because it can't be patented. So,
God already invented it.
that's right.
God holds the patent.
God holds a patent on that.
That's good.
So
Okay, so these poor yam farmers aren't getting rich,
they probably are to some degree, but not and I think the process is to make it into powder and to put it into pill form or cream form, whatever, that requires, money and things, but it's not as lucrative as, the synthetic drugs that are out there on the market, which are millions and billions of dollars a year. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's wild.
Yeah, and that's why we get a lot of pushback from traditional medicine, why we get a lot of pushback from insurance companies and other things is, you're practicing snake oil and things like that. But the research is out there. I mean, testosterone, we've been using that for over 100 years.
Uh-huh.
And again, you look back at the studies and things that have been done, natural testosterone that comes from these sources are not associated with the strokes and the heart attacks and things like that you can get with synthetic medication. So
Right.
yeah.
Dang. Okay. Let's take a quick break.
Sounds good.
Horrible.
Mm.
The road rage, and all the psychological impact it has, not to mention physical. So yeah.
Because that's like when you take drugs, like that essentially just opens up all of your chemical pathways, right? Like that's like what meth does, right? It just opens up all of your dopamine and epinephrine and all of it. So it kind of just lets it all loose. So you feel amazing in the moment, but then it all stops again.
Right. Yeah, and then you have that feedback loop, and then it wants more, and it takes more to get that same thing, and
Yeah.
so yeah.
So I just wonder if like steroids, is that just like turning on like different parts of you that shouldn't be turned on like that? That's what causes the issue.
Probably to a hyper extent, yeah. All your growth hormone, growth factor, and all those types of things. It probably stimulates those to a degree that nature never really intended.
What about one cycle a year after the age of 35? Just to keep up with the younger boys.
I wouldn't do synthetic, and I think that's kind of the take home. What I've learned from Benessery is all the synthetic stuff that's made in a lab, has a lot of dangerous side effects to it.
Okay.
Where when compared to bioidentical things, the side effects, we don't see that when you do the retroactive studies and long-term studies and things like that. So, which is kind of the neat thing about RFK Jr. coming on board. He's really interested in a lot of this stuff because it's not because there's no money in it. There's no funding to research it. And so it's never researched really heavily and things like that because there's
so
no
people
money
can
in it.
say, well, where are the studies? Where are the particularly the double-blind studies that demonstrate that this is beneficial?
Right.
It's like, well, we don't have that. We have patient testimonials.
Well, we do have some double-blind studies. So Dr. Rosier, he's out of California, and he's big into this. He has all that data. And so I went to one of his conferences, and, the packet is probably like 4 inches thick. It's like a book. And half of that is all his data of the studies that have been done and to kind of show that it's safe, it's effective, and the other stuff, the synthetic stuff, that's where you see all the things. So there was a big study, the Women's Health Initiative, which showed that they had to shut down the progesterone wing because people were dying. And so progesterone is dangerous. Don't use it. Estrogen, kind of same thing. We're starting to see increased breast cancer. Estrogen, don't use it. But what they
This is,
said,
and when you said this is all referring to synthetic clones of what the body might naturally produce.
correct.
Okay.
Yeah. So what they did is they lumped all of it into one. Well, not estrogen, not all estrogens are the same. Not all progesterones are the same.
Mm.
The synthetic stuff is not the same as the bioidentical stuff. So when you break that out, then the bioidentical stuff, you didn't have those side effects of heart attack, stroke, breast cancer. And the WHI study covered that up initially and then finally had to come out and say, yeah, our study was not really scientifically sound.
It
So,
was compromised in some way.
yeah,
WHI is
Women's Health Initiative. So it
okay.
was a big study back in the day. But anyway, and there's other studies out there to kind of show that. And then some of the studies they do throw out there were just kind of, weird, like testosterone increases your risk for prostate cancer. There's nothing that's been proven that other than one guy had one patient back in the 1940s, but other than that, that was it. So no study in the world today would say you can make a conclusion off of one patient. And we've actually seen people with active prostate cancer with working in accordance with their oncologist, putting them on testosterone, and actually have no recurrence of the prostate cancer. So there's just again different things, and I think that's kind of what's exciting about RFK Jr. coming out is he's going to, I think, kind of open that up to maybe a little bit more research to kind of get to the truth of some of this stuff and to the bottom of it. So
It seems to me that your concern is that the incentives behind the pharmaceutical industry are creating health outcomes that are not desirable, but also serve the interests of the very industry that created some of those health outcomes.
correct.
Uh, the the medicine that you put people on has side effects that other parts of the pharmaceutical industry, maybe the same company, can then sort of swoop in and create another prescription opportunity.
Yeah.
And that prescription opportunity can lead to more prescription opportunities.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on the breaking up that cycle? Like where would you start? Fixing the American diet, fixing the American approach to exercise? What?
Yeah, I think definitely diet and exercise is huge, what we call therapeutic lifestyle changes, because, you can throw medicine at things all you want, but without those lifestyle changes, they're really not going to help or be beneficial. And I think Americans especially have such an addiction to medications in general. You look at other, countries around the world, and we use a whole lot more medicine than other countries do.
Do you know? I don't know. Do you know when this started? Was this the 60s? Was it after World War II?
I'm not sure when it really started.
Mm.
Yeah. Probably, I would say, yeah, the 50s, 60s, and then marketing came into play, and you need this to feel better, and that's the other thing, a lot of people who have depression and anxiety, especially women, progesterone has been shown to help with that. So this Dr. Rosier had a case where a lady came in and she was postpartum depression, suicidal, gave her a shot of progesterone. An hour later, she walked out and she was perfectly happy. And so,
But the problem is that progesterone increases your risk for other
the
diseases.
synthetic does.
The synthetic.
Yep. So the
Right.
bioidentical stuff, the natural stuff does not. And so I think the big thing in medicine is correlation does not prove causation.
Mm-hmm.
And we were taught in medical schools and things like that maybe correlation does prove causation. So for instance, one of the examples he gives is popsicles cause skin cancer because all the kids took two groups of kids. One lived in the inner city and one lived on the beach.
Mm-hmm.
And the kids that ate more popsicles got skin cancer. Well, those were the kids that lived on the beach. And it had no, the causation, the correlation didn't prove it. The causation of their skin cancer was the sun exposure.
Right. Right.
But in
But it wasn't
medicine,
like they
so
were
many
licking the
times,
cancer sticks.
right? So many times in medicine, we get these ideas of, oh, that causes that, and it's like really not the cause. It may be
Right. It may even
associated.
be a predictor.
Right.
Right. Your popsicle consumption might actually predict your what is it, melanoma?
Yeah, melanoma.
Yeah,
Yeah,
your likelihood of getting melanoma.
right.
But that doesn't mean you should stop having popsicles.
Right, because that's not truly the cause of it.
Right.
It's the sun exposure that's causing it. So, yeah.
Right.
So I think we have to kind of dig deeper and kind of get to the root cause of some of these issues of what is really truly causing a lot of these problems. So sedentary lifestyle, poor diet, lack of exercise, quality of food. Back in the 30s, to get the vitamin C that you needed, you had to consume an orange. Nowadays, because of our soil depletion and things like that, you'd have to consume 8 oranges to get that same amount of vitamin C that you got in one orange back in 1930. So
Wow.
there's a lot of things that I think we need to kind of look at. Again, a lot of variables.
Did you did you try the fruit down in Honduras?
Oh yeah,
Isn't that crazy?
yeah,
So I've been in Belize, Mexico, and Guatemala. And it's just like, my gosh, now that is a mango.
right.
And you have a banana, and you're like, now that's a banana. Right. And then you have an orange, and you're like, why are they keeping this from us?
Right,
Right.
yeah, yeah.
I mean, and honestly, it went beyond the fruit. I remember having like rice and beans with stewed chicken, like the least fancy meal you can imagine. And I just remember eating this and being like, now is that is good chicken.
Yeah,
Dang.
yeah.
Where did they find this chicken?
I know, right? It's free range.
It's free range. Well, yeah, that's true. Yeah. Yeah. Just out in the eating ticks and mosquitoes and any other little bugger they can find in the
Yeah,
out in the grass.
yeah,
Yeah. I mean, it was great. Now, I will admit, when I was in Belize, I had a bit of, frankly, diet trauma because, I mean, like if you have like fried plantains with stewed chicken and rice and beans, now that's a good meal. But then if the other two meals of your day are rice and beans with nothing else, like rice and beans for a year,
yeah,
when I got back to the States, I didn't eat rice for 2 years.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
I was like,
Yeah.
I hate this stuff.
yeah,
Like, yeah, people would be like, hey, like they made these like rice balls. I was like, I don't want, yeah.
yeah, yeah. That's
Took
the
me
way it
2
was
years to
in
eat it again.
Nepal. Everything was rice, and we had to keep towards the end of our trip. We're like, just a little bit of rice, please, just a little bit,
Right.
'Cause it was just like, oh, so tired of rice. But the vegetables over there were huge,
Yep.
and they're fresh and they're delicious.
Yeah.
too. So yeah, it's
Yeah.
great.
So, I mean, it seems to me that if you could connect some dots, it's like, okay, even if you were conscientious about your vitamin intake, it's like, okay, I got to eat 8 oranges. I got to eat like 4 pounds of chicken to get the protein. I got to eat so much. Even if you were conscientious about the nutrients, you'd have to eat a lot. In addition to that, America has lost its instinct for like nutrition sensibility, right?
Right.
I think is it Casey and Callie Means? They're kind of this young brother and sister duo who are basically campaigning for the reform of the American diet. The case they make is that in the late 80s and early 90s, tobacco producers realized the party was over. America was basically going to stop smoking. The case they say is that these tobacco companies started buying up food companies and then took all these scientists who had spent their careers learning how to make cigarettes addictive. And they said, get out there and make food addictive.
Yeah.
Right? So make that box of Cheez-Its something that you can never stop. Like you just need another Cheez-It.
Yeah.
Just one more Cheez-It, right? So the argument goes is that these scientists were incentivized to, it's not like they were conspiring to make Americans sick, but they were incentivized to make Americans want to eat more calories with lower levels of satiation or satiety,
Right.
right? Like you didn't feel full,
Yeah.
but you actually had eaten like 1,000 calories of
Right.
Cheez-Its,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
you didn't feel full.
Right.
That's insane.
Has very little nutrient value. Yeah.
Right. And then in addition, it didn't be right because you're developing these foods with no eye towards nutrient profile. You're developing these foods solely with an eye towards get them to take another bite.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Man, and I felt it, man. Have you ever like just like eaten one potato chip, like a Lay's potato chip?
Yeah.
It's so freaking good.
Yeah. By design.
By
Yeah.
design. So when was the last time you were overseas?
Honduras, we were,
Honduras?
yeah, there in March.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Gotcha. And this is like an annual trip for you and your wife? What's
It's let's see, we were there about 3 years ago because my wife and I went to a Bible college, so we weren't able to go for a couple years.
uh-huh.
And since then, that group is probably going to quit because the people that have been doing it for like 30 years, and they're in their mid 70s, early 80s, and so I think that's going to go away. But we also have other groups that we've gone on different trips with, and we'll probably continue to go different places because,
Okay.
yeah.
What's the biggest thing that jumps out to you about, say, Nepalese culture?
Just that sense of community, you know.
Okay.
Yeah. So we went to their first village up in the mountains, and we do remote. You know, we don't go to a town and things like that. We go to these remote villages.
Okay.
So we fell in at this village, and there was a pastor there, and so we kind of stayed in the church, and then we ran the clinic out of a little building there in the village. But there was a little boy there that was kind of running around helping the pastor. And I'm like, "Oh, is this your son?" He's like, "Well, we adopted him because he was an orphan." And so just that sense of community of they take care of each other, they watch over each other. They're like these little old ladies that came to our clinic and they were in their 80s. And I'm like, "How did you get here?" And some of them had walked like 3 hours. Others are like, "Oh, I got a ride on a motorcycle from a guy that was coming up the mountain." And,
Mm-hmm.
so yeah. Yeah, just that sense of humanity and community,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. They don't have a lot of material possessions, but they seem happy, you know?
Right. Right. Yeah. Yeah. We have a lot of stuff here,
Yeah.
don't we?
Yeah.
Should I even admit this? Whatever. Uh, my family and we own storage units. There's good money in storage units.
Yeah, there is.
I had to have like a little bit of I had a miniature spiritual crisis when I realized we were going to get into the storage unit business. I thought to myself, are we just enabling
Yeah.
the continuation of American materialism? Hard to argue that we're not.
Yeah.
Yeah. People need somewhere to put stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. You're providing a service.
It's a service. It's a service. However, I have walked through some of these storage units and I have looked at what is stored there and I have thought, do we need this?
Right.
Yeah, do we need this
Why,
much?
why keep that? Yeah.
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 Yeah. I had a buddy who every time he bought something, he tried to if he brought it home, he would try to find something in his house that he didn't need and donate it or toss it out or something.
Mhm.
I thought there was something to be said there.
Yeah.
Yeah. When I was senior year of college, I did a lot of horseback riding, and I ended up riding with one person and quite separately riding with another. And we would go up to the trail, and man, this one guy, he always had the best time with his horses. But like you opened up like the tack section of his horse trailer, he had two horses, one for him, one for me, two saddles, two bridles, bowl for water for his dog, and a jar of water to hold the water that he then poured out for his dog, and then saddle blankets. That was it.
Mhm.
Man, we always had a good time.
Yeah.
It was the best riding, some of the best riding I've ever done. He just had this simple approach to it.
Yeah.
This other person I rode with, like you opened up the tack section of their trailer. I mean, it was every imaginable accoutrement to riding that you can imagine. Every gimmicky piece of horse equipment. You couldn't find stuff. It was too full. It represented every attempt that this person had had to fix their riding issues through some piece of equipment rather than becoming a better rider. I mean, it was a junk closet of a tack shed. And I just remember thinking, oh, the the level of equipment you have is no indication of the level of ability or enjoyment that you're going to get from this activity.
Right.
Right. But American consumerism has certainly encouraged you to think one more purchase
Yeah.
will fix everything.
Yeah.
So,
Yep.
okay. So tell, I'm curious to hear your thoughts on like if you could prescribe changes to the way Americans ate or exercised or even thought about supplements, like some of the stuff you're talking about with hormone replacement. Like, what are your top three things that you're like, I wish every American was doing X, Y, and Z in terms of health?
I kind of break it down into three areas: body, soul, and spirit. So I think there's definitely a spirituality component, that a lot of people are lacking, and therefore they're existing, but they're not really living.
Okay.
And then I think body, your physical body and things like that, doing things to keep it in shape, and then your mind, just exercising your mind and things like that. Taking on a new task, doing crossword puzzles, writing with the non-dominant hand, just
Oh,
different
gosh.
things,
Yeah.
to kind of keep your mind busy. But I think it's kind of a three-pronged approach.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Would you get rid of video games if you could?
I I don't know if I'd get rid of them. I would. So my kids, they played video games, but it was like either you self-regulate or I will.
Okay.
So there was definitely a time limit. And I know in medicine we say, keep your screen time to 2 hours a day, for kids. And so,
Man,
um,
I failed that.
yeah. I think the big thing is controlling it, as far as, okay, yeah, let's not get rid of it, but let's control it, let's manage it,
Mm.
that type of thing. Because I think there is some good things that can come out of that, creativity, eye-hand coordination, different things like that. But it can
Mm.
also be, just like anything, abused.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anything to excess can be abused.
Oh, for sure. I remember this friend in college, Halo 3 came out. The way he described him playing Halo 3 made it sound as if it was like a cross between a really a really thorough drug trip and a coma.
Uh,
No, I'm serious. He was like, "Oh yeah, I got Halo 3 and I started playing and like 48 hours later,
uh,
I came to and my room was a mess and it was filled with like pizza boxes and food wrappers and I looked at myself and I don't even know how I was in the clothes I was wearing, but I had beaten it,
yeah,
whatever the final level of Halo 3
yeah.
is.
I think that's
It
one.
was like a coma.
Yeah, that's one of the dangers of the video game is you get sucked into that and then you lose, that socialization and that community, and things
Hmm.
like that. Even though people game together. My younger son who lives in Riverton games with his older brother in Germany,
Yep,
so it is some connection there
sure.
and things like that. But again, I think it should be regulated to some degree. And I
Right.
think we can use video games for like education,
Yep.
different things like that. And yeah, but I think it definitely needs somewhat of a control and balance.
Yeah.
Yeah, two
Yeah.
2 days in your basement playing video games is not healthy.
Well, and it does remind me the extent to which these things are successfully engineered to produce so dopamine is basically a pleasure hormone, correct?
Correct.
But is it serotonin that helps create focus and attention
Mhm.
on a task? Am I tracking this correctly?
Correct.
Okay. I mean, you got to hand it to the game designers that they've created an experience would that people would basically willingly become zombie-esque
Yeah.
in order to pursue it.
Right.
That's an accomplishment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they're
Yeah.
missing out on a whole big world out there with all kinds of exciting things and,
Sure.
and they're living in their ultra reality, and
Man, it's such a good one.
yeah.
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 I've been watching the breakdowns of the new GTA games, Grand Theft Auto.
Yeah.
Yeah, and just the level of detail and the level of thought that are going into these gaming experiences. I don't play video games, but I actually have an appreciation for the level of design behind them that
Mhm.
are creating these incentives to stay plugged into them for days at a time. I mean,
Yeah.
you got to hand it to them.
Yeah.
It's impressive.
Yeah.
So, oh yeah.
It's interesting because we had a guy on the other day, named Andrew Laubacher,
Hmm.
and he works with this group called Humanality, and their whole goal is to like help people be more intentional with their technology. And he said that when you play video games, what was it? Something was released at 100%. Was it dopamine?
I that sounds right. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah,
Yeah.
essentially he said it was like as if your mind was like in the state of pure pleasure for a very long period of time. And he
Hmm.
said in a way that you can't get anywhere else, which was very interesting because I never really experienced that.
Hmm.
Like playing video games was like it's fun, but I'm not like, pure pleasure. Like I get bored pretty easily sometimes with them.
Yeah.
So I wonder if like because I also noticed it seems like a lot of the new games are not very fun.
Hmm.
It's like everyone.
I do want to push back against that a little bit.
Okay.
It appears to me from my read of the commentary on many modern games that people are having a great time.
Really?
That's what comes across from my read of the online commentary.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. And I'm referring to Minecraft, Fortnite, Apex,
Uh-huh.
Grand Theft Auto, Red Dead Redemption, particularly the second one. People, again, at least the commentary I'm reading, people are into it.
Really?
Hmm.
Maybe there are other games that are total flops. There are total flops, of course.
Because I've
What are you seeing?
I've never played GTA or Red Dead
Hmm.
or Apex, but I played Fortnite. I was like, this is so boring. And then I played like because I grew up playing like Age of Empires, Call of Duty,
Oh,
um, lots of strategy games, like the old Star Wars games.
Hmm.
And all of those was like it required a lot of skill. They built the game mechanics really well, so it felt fun.
Hmm.
I play these new games and I'm like, this is so cheesy and easy and like
Oh,
I don't know, maybe it's just like the old school boys were like it was raw, it was new, like we had to kind of figure it out. Now it's like everything's so easy. It's just like what kind of character traits can you put on your guy? What kind of skin? I don't know.
yeah, I
I
I
just
I guess I don't know for sure either.
yeah,
Uh, I don't. Yeah, I don't find a lot. I'm not seeing anyone complaining of a lack of engagement with modern games.
interesting.
Yeah.
Okay,
Again, I'm sure there are duds out there.
sure.
Yeah.
Huh,
But
okay. I guess maybe I can't make my point then.
well, I mean, you're also, Fortnite was not designed for you. Fortnite design was designed for people a decade younger, right? Fortnite is designed for like 14, 15, and 16-year-olds. So is Minecraft, right? Um, so you may have to some degree aged out of the target audience. So that might be a factor.
Mm,
Um, Also, I mean, like Tony, you're talking about, if you have a high level of engagement with your community and other things in your life, you're not relying on entertainment for meaning.
mm.
Oh,
Oh, that's a
yeah,
good point.
yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, so like if you're engaged with people more,
You're
then
getting your dopamine fix through that,
yeah.
you
sure.
know. Yeah.
I will say, someone showed me Apex, and they were like, "Hey, man, you want to play?" And I'm Tom. I'm even a decade older than you, And I said, don't give me the controller.
Yeah.
Don't. I'll get into it. I'll get motivated to beat it. Like I'll just and yeah, I remember myself being a 15-year-old. All I could think about was the Lord of the Rings Return of the King video game, you
That
know.
was so good.
Yeah, I'm not
Great.
complaining.
Yeah.
It was a good time. Yeah. So yeah, I just remember like, man, even at 35, I'm like, don't give it to me.
Yeah.
I'll start playing. I'll be bad at it, and I'll want to get better. And where will that lead?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so Tony, when are we going to get you over to jiu-jitsu?
I don't know. Yeah. So it was kind of interesting because in Iraq, uh, they brought back to the army, everybody's a warrior, so combatives. And so we were
Uh-huh.
doing combatives one day, and this little specialist, she weighed probably 110 pounds, threw the first sergeant and ended up breaking his collarbone. So he ended up getting shipped back to the States and stuff. So, yeah, it's
Wait, she broke his
oh
collarbone.
yeah, she threw him and he landed wrong and yeah.
Whoo.
So I don't know. I don't like broken bones.
No, broken bones they're not a good time.
Yeah.
Honestly, I think one of the things I can truly say about the sport is you can approach it at so many different levels and for so many different reasons. And so we have guys, who are trying to compete at a pretty serious level.
Mhm.
We have guys who are trying to stay healthy by just like you were saying, by just moving around, having a physical activity. Most people land somewhere in the middle. They want to be good, but they're not trying to become the next IBJJF world champion. Um, so we have guys who are in their 50s. We have guys who are teenagers. So you really have like a 40-year span, even in just our little club
Mhm.
where I train, and we're pretty good about staying injury free because we do train people to be responsive and receptive and respectful of other people's the level of intensity that other person is coming at.
Right. Yeah.
So
Yeah. Might have to give it a try. Try
might have
something
to give
new.
it a try.
I think you'd like it. I mean, it is pretty cool just to have like, at least for me, what I found the hardest thing is like remembering where your body is.
Yeah.
Because it's like you're in a move and you're like, get this grapple on someone, and then someone's like, move your legs. I was like, oh yeah, legs.
Right.
And you're like, I could put them there, I can hold them that way, but then like you have to make sure your mechanical advantage is always on your side. So it's like you're compressing, you're keeping the space tight, and then you have all these things in your mind like, what do I do next? So it's almost like I don't know what would be a good way of describing it, but it's almost like it's like dance.
Folding laundry with
Folding laundry,
people still
yeah.
inside the laundry.
That's a good way to put it.
Murder yoga.
Ooh, that's a
Yeah.
good one.
Murder yoga.
Hmm. Yep.
I say I'm aggressively hugging people.
Yeah. Aggressively hugging people. Hmm. Yep.
Almost like
Anticipatory self-defense.
that's a good one.
Yep.
Yeah, it's almost like you're dancing and playing an instrument at the same time.
Mm.
Because you're thinking about the complex moves in a period of time, but you're also using your body to do it.
Mm. Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
pretty complicated.
There's elements that are similar to the riffing that happens in jazz, right?
Oh,
The free
yeah.
form, that organized chaos.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
So, yeah, no, I'd love to have you come and try it. So you've done some army combative stuff
Yeah.
in your career.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. I wrestled in high school, but that's
Oh, do you miss that?
no. That's the longest, whatever, 3 minutes of your life or whatever.
Right.
Cottonmouth and yeah, breathing hard and everything.
Right.
And then I had some knee issues, so my knees kind of
Uh,
went bad and would pop out of place. And yeah, that was
Right,
never any
okay.
fun. But
So nowadays you focus on the lifting,
yeah, I try to
cardio.
preserve my knees from anything that might hyperextend them or anything like that.
Right.
So,
Okay.
other than that, yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Well, we'd love to have you. But clearly what we're going to have to do is have you back on the podcast at some
Yeah,
future
it'd be
date.
great.
I feel like I've just scratched the surface, but I could just sit here all day asking you questions.
Yeah, it's good.
So, yes, thank you so much for your time, man. We really appreciate you making
Yeah.
time in your week to come out and chat with us, and hope to have you back soon.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, man. Cheers.